All right, so we are now heading into week 3. So you know what that means. It's time to look at the big games for this next week and give you my top 25 going into this week. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. I'm not going to be talking about every major game this week. I will be putting that in the socials, so make sure you stay tuned for that. But not every prediction I have is going to be in the video, but I will touch on them just a little bit. I won't really break every game down, though. So starting out with Arizona at Kansas State. Kansas State is at home. Arizona struggled a bit against Northern Arizona. I know McMillan and Fafita are studs at Arizona. I think they're definitely going to perform well in this game as well. But I think Kansas State will bring in a rushing attack with a dual-threat quarterback, Avery Johnson, and really a solid running back in DJ Giddens. My question is really, can Arizona force Avery Johnson to pass, and can they stop him from breaking away and forcing big plays when he breaks out of the pocket, if he does decide to keep it? Unsure on that. Can Kansas State stop Arizona from throwing the ball all over them? Unsure on that. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game, but I do think Kansas State's going to pull it out in the end. I don't really trust either defense, but just historically, I think that Kansas State has the better shot of showing up on defense, having that edge there. They have had solid defenses in the past, so I just think they might be able to figure it out a little bit better than Arizona can. Also, I think that we need to keep an eye on McMillan because he didn't get a ton of touches last week. It's possible he's a bit banged up or injured, which could also have a big swing on this game. Either way, though, even if he's not hurt, I do still have Kansas State. So, Next game I have is Alabama at Wisconsin, and I think some of you guys are going to be tricked this week. I think that some are going to look at last week's game against USF, see Alabama is on the road here. We know that they're a bit shaky on the road. That offensive line for Bama looked pretty bad against USF. And you may be like, oh, that they're going to get worked by Wisconsin. But I'm going to tell you, don't fall for that trap. I'm expecting a big game for Alabama here. We've seen this play like this. We've seen this happen over and over again. Alabama is going to play poorly against this inferior opponent. People doubt them, and then they blow out the next team they play. And I know this is not a Saban team, so we can't expect the same result, but I still expect something pretty similar. We're going to see an entirely different Alabama team. I think that them struggling with USF is actually the worst thing that could have happened for Wisconsin, because Alabama now knows exactly what they need to work on and practice it. And I think that they're going to have a chip on their shoulder this week to prove that they are the team that people think they are. Wisconsin, they have Tyler Van Dyke, and I think that does not work to their benefit. I think Bama is going to be able to really stop him, pick him off. He has a turnover problem, and I don't expect that's going to change with a new change of scenery or a new system. I don't think it's going to fix that. And also I think that Alabama secondary has the pieces that are going to be able to force those turnovers, force those interceptions, and turn this game on its head. I think Alabama is going to be able to run the ball really effectively as well on Wisconsin. We're going to see Ryan Williams probably have a big game. I know that Wisconsin's strength on defense is probably their secondary, but Ryan Williams looks pretty dang good, and even if they can't get it to him a lot, I think that they're going to have a really solid running game. So we saw USF run on Alabama effectively, and I just don't expect Wisconsin to be able to do that. And I have Bama by a lot in this game. I hope I'm wrong. I'm not an Alabama fan by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they're one of my least favorite teams, but I think that they have this game pretty well locked down. The next game I have is LSU at South Carolina. This game just got a whole lot more interesting after last week. South Carolina shocked everyone by beating Kentucky in the way that they did. They beat them, I believe, 31-6, and I think that's going to only make this environment for South Carolina even more insane. I think South Carolina will definitely have a noticeable home field advantage here that will give them a little bit of an edge, but I think we saw two very different versions of South Carolina the past 2 weeks, and I think that's going to be pretty inconsistent throughout the season. We're going to see them maybe perform well in waves, and I doubt that they're going to be able to really perform at a high level consistently. Let's not forget that they almost lost to an FCS school in week 1. Lenore Sellers looked pretty average in this game he looked pretty average last week against LSU, and I think LSU's defense is well improved as to what they were last year, and maybe be able to be a pretty big factor in this game. South Carolina's defense also looked really solid last week, though. That pass rush was really what gave them the win, I feel like, overall. I mean, there's a lot of factors that is the reason that they won, but that pass rush was a huge reason that they were able to perform so well. And I think that this week, that's not going to be as big of a factor because LSU's offensive line, their tackles are really, really solid, some of the best. So I don't think that South Carolina is going to be able to really get as much pressure here. I just think that LSU also has a better offense. They have the edge at quarterback with Garrett Nussmeier. I really like him and the weapons that he has. And I think LSU is going to be able to put this one away before the fourth quarter. I think LSU really needs to bounce back, and I think they're going to get it here on the road at Williams-Brice Stadium. The next game I have is Boston College at Missouri, and Boston College's win against Florida State, it didn't impress me a whole lot, more because I felt like FSU lost it more than Boston College won it. Don't get me wrong, Boston College definitely has some guys that can play. That quarterback in Castellanos is something else, but I think Missouri has this one. I know that their competition has not been the highest of quality yet. Missouri hasn't played a ton of great teams yet. They've only played 2 games, and I mean, there's nothing really to say so far, but just going off of what we know or what we think we know, Missouri has one thing I do know is they've not had a single point scored on them so far through those 2 games, so no real weaknesses to point out on defense yet. They have Brady Cook and Luther Burden still, so that's going to be a problem for Boston College. They may be even better on offense than they were last year, and I think that FSU game is just not indicative of what Boston College is as a team. I still have my doubts about Bill O'Brien, and I think Missouri just is going to be able to win this game confidently, but we'll have to wait and see. So now to Tulane at Oklahoma. Tulane, they're going to Oklahoma's place, and my tune about Tulane is a lot different than it was last week. I had some doubts last week. Those are no longer doubts. I've seen Tulane play at a much higher level than I expected, and after seeing Oklahoma up to this point, they look pretty unremarkable. They have a pretty great defense, but the offense is even worse than I could have expected. Tulane fought that game with Kansas State, and they really should have won. And I think that they're going to go into Oklahoma and win this time outright. Oklahoma is going to get exposed sooner or later, and this is that week, I think. Tulane's freshman quarterback, Ken Ball. That coaching staff obviously knows what they're doing. Summerall really was able to put on a great game against a high-tier power conference opponent that I think is even better than Oklahoma. So give me Tulane for the upset here, and I don't really think it should be much of an upset. I think that Tulane will be able to handle Oklahoma pretty effectively. The next game I have is Notre Dame at Purdue. Notre Dame is coming off of a heartbreaking loss to NIU, obviously, as we know. We haven't seen much from Purdue yet. They had a shutout game against their FCS opponent in 2 weeks ago. In week 1, they had a bye last week, I think, and so here we are. The question here is whether or not Notre Dame's players will take that loss as a chip on their shoulder, or whether it's going to really break their spirit and hinder them further. What do I expect from Purdue, though? I expect a team that's pretty bad on defense with a high potential quarterback that may have some ball security issues that I don't think will be really resolved yet. And they do have a solid running back duo, so they have that. But it's my feel that Notre Dame is going to come out more prepared for this game than they were the last game. And I think that their ceiling is just higher. I think that Purdue's defense will probably be a good unit for Notre Dame to get right against. I think Notre Dame's defense will be able to do enough to prevent Purdue from scoring too much. Sure, Notre Dame did lose to NIU, but let's not forget what they did to A&M in week 1. We've seen 2 very different versions of Notre Dame, and I don't know which one we're going to see Saturday, but I'm leaning on a better Notre Dame. I'm banking on them to bounce back here and beat Purdue. So the next game I have is Georgia at Kentucky, and I'm going to cut right to it, give you my prediction right off the bat. Georgia's going to go into Kentucky and win. Kentucky looked embarrassing last week against South Carolina, only completing 6 passes all game on a defense that's not nearly as good as Georgia's is going to be. And let's just take a moment to look back at what Georgia was able to do to Clemson. You may be quick to overreact, or you may have been quick to overreact and sell on Clemson. I doubted them as well, but did you watch their game last week against App State? Say what you will about App State. I think they're a pretty good team for the division that they're in. But what Clemson was able to do to them, regardless of who App State was this year, was ridiculous. Offensively, Clemson was absolutely on fire. Cade Klubnik was completing so many. Like, I don't know the percentage exactly, but I think he only missed like 2 or 3 passes the whole night. And Georgia held them to 3 points in week 1. Clemson may very well be in the ACC championship game. In fact, they are the number 2 odds-on favorite to win it. And Georgia just pummeled them, and I don't think that they're going to let Kentucky sneak up on them in this game. Georgia wins, and comfortably. I don't have very much doubt about that. Next, I have Memphis at Florida State, and Florida State had one of the most embarrassing starts to this season. And I'm looking at this game now, and I really have no clue who I should pick, and that really shouldn't be the case. This is probably the least confident pick I have in this whole video, so definitely don't take this one to the bank. But I do think Florida State is going to win this game. I could very easily see this game going the other way, though. Memphis winning, going into Doak Campbell and just taking it. But I have a hard time seeing Florida State start the season 0-3. At some point, I have to expect Florida State to get into another gear. Not that I think they're going to be really good this year or anything, but I think at some point I expect them to at least look improved. I mean, it can't get much worse after what we saw against Boston College. Memphis looks good, though, and they're one of the favorites to get that G5 auto bid spot in the playoffs, and this could be a game that's lined perfectly up for them to make that statement and get into the conversation, so they have a ton to play for. And my head is telling me Memphis is winning, and right now, I mean, I'm going back and forth in my head, but I'm going to stick with my gut and say that Florida State's going to pull out the win here. I don't really know how, because everything looked bad last week or 2 weeks ago, so I guess I'm going with Florida State. I don't know how it's going to happen, how they're going to get the win, or what this game is going to look like, but that's what I'm going with. Next, I have A&M at Florida. And so after watching Notre Dame fall to NIU, what does that mean for Texas A&M, the team that lost to Notre Dame in week 1? I don't think it means a whole lot. I think the Notre Dame that played against A&M looked like a whole different team, and I don't think A&M just made it look that way. I do think that Notre Dame looked like a much better team that week because they were playing at a much higher level. I did see a lot of things that I did like about Texas A&M, and I think that we're going to see Wigman play a lot better against Florida, who has a pretty rough defense, or at least they did in week 1. I think he's going to look a lot better against this Florida defense. And I think that I trust Mike Elko more than I trust Billy Napier. As a coach, I think that A&M has a defense that could really make it hard for Florida. I don't even really know who's starting at quarterback for Florida, and they just looked really bad week 1. Week 2, kind of hard to get anything out of a game against Samford, so I don't really know what to expect as far as improvements go in the changes they made after week 1. But this game is at the Swamp, and assuming A&M doesn't shut the place down like Miami did, that's not an easy environment to go into and win. But at the end of the day, I just don't trust Florida to really beat anyone of note, and I think A&M is just a better team. Simple as that. Florida could turn the public perception around on them in this game, but I just don't think so. And the last game I am going to predict in this video is Oregon at Oregon State, and I'm just going to keep betting against Oregon until they can prove to me that they are better than what I've been seeing them as, because they struggled with 2 non-power conference opponents, and they're playing technically another non-power conference opponent here because the Pac-12 was dissolved. And to be completely honest, I haven't had a chance to look at Oregon State, and I don't really know what they are this year, but I know that it's a home game, it's a rivalry game, and I know I've seen a lot of really bad football played on Oregon's side that can be easily exploited by a half-decent team, and unless they make some big leaps in practice soon, someone is going to get a piece of them soon, and I don't see why it can't be Oregon State. I don't have a bunch of stats to back this up, and logic would lean Oregon in this game, and maybe I really shouldn't even be predicting this game because of how little I know about Oregon State this season so far, but my pick is going to be against the Ducks because they just I haven't seen anything that really impresses me to this point, so I got to go with them. And that's all the predictions, so I'm going to move on to my top 25. Again, this is a power ratings system similar to what Josh Pate does. This is not a rankings video or system, so you will see teams that lost that go way higher in my ratings because I feel like they played at a level that correlates to the number that they are. So basically, I feel like every team is placed in a position based on how good of a team I think they are, not dependent on whether they won or lost. Obviously, that's going to factor into how good a team is a lot of the times. But for instance, Arkansas played a really close game against Oklahoma State. I moved Arkansas way up in my rankings or ratings because I feel like Arkansas played just as good and played good enough to win against Oklahoma State, and I would pick them on a neutral field to be almost identical or similar games to play out. So I have them rated higher even after a loss. They were not in my top 25, and now they're like in the top half. So hopefully that explains it. I know it's a little bit confusing. Hopefully that can make some sense. But I'm going to throw out my top 25, and you guys can go ahead and get a look at it. Obviously, you can see Maryland is gone, Georgia Tech is gone, Oklahoma's gone, Notre Dame is gone, and Kansas is gone. Obviously, Kansas lost, Georgia Tech lost, Maryland lost. And I felt like they played at a level below what I was expecting from them, so that's why they fell out of the top 25. Oklahoma played also at a pretty bad level. They played a 4-point game against Houston, so I feel like they were not top 25 worthy. To me, Notre Dame lost to NIU, and they were outplayed. It wasn't like a fluke game, so I feel like they definitely did not deserve to be in the top 25 after that. So that's why all those teams are gone. Boston College, Illinois, Clemson, Tulane, and Arkansas, welcome to the top 25. Obviously, like I said, I don't necessarily think Boston College is as good after that win against Florida State. But I do think that they played at just barely a top 25 level. We'll see really quickly this week how they look against Missouri. If they get blown out, I'm sure they'll fall. But if they play pretty close, they'll probably stay where they're at. Illinois obviously was much better than I expected. They took out Kansas. Clemson looked way better this past week than they did in week 1, so I put them back in the top 25. Tulane looked like they had every ability and really should have beaten Kansas State, so I feel like they, shouldn't be too much farther behind Kansas State or even, ahead of maybe. But no, I have them one spot ahead of Kansas State because I felt like they played better. They just didn't get lucky in the end. But I do feel like they were a better team that day. So, and maybe overall. So that's why I have them a spot higher. I know that's probably, again, another confusing point there. But let's see. What else do I have? Obviously the top 4 spots you can see they're the same as they were last week. Tennessee took back over the 5 spot after they obliterated North Carolina State and after Alabama struggled with USF. That also allowed Miami to jump Alabama and take that number 6 spot. And Penn State fell big time after having to come back and win a game against Bowling Green. Nebraska shot up after they looked, really, really solid. So Arkansas, Tulane, like I said, they shot up despite losses because they played at a top 15 level. And most of the other movement is just due to some teams falling and some teams rising. So I wouldn't put too much weight into the other movement that you see. Because I didn't get in, especially with Louisville, I know they moved up from 25 to 19, mostly just because of how many teams fell out and rearrangement that happened. But yeah, that's the video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, comment, subscribe. For more predictions, keep a look on the socials. I still have to predict the Washington State-Washington game, West Virginia-Pitt game, West Virginia-Pitt game, and Colorado State, and Maryland-Virginia. Those are the games I have to predict. So I will do that on the socials, so make sure you are keeping an eye out on those. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night or rest of your day whenever you're watching. See ya. Peace.